I've always found it chilling how quickly a perfect day can turn into tragedy out on the water. I remember reading about Anthony White, a marine biology student with a passion for surfing who ignored all the warning signs one morning. He paddled out 150 yards from Surf Beach in California, near a seal rookery, seeking the perfect wave. He never came back. The summer of 2014 brought ideal weather to Surf Beach. Sunshine streamed through the morning mist, casting golden patterns on the water's surface. Anthony, just 22, embodied the spirit of a California surfer, fearless yet deeply respectful of the ocean. Friends described him as the perfect blend of adventurous spirit and methodical researcher, always studying surf spots and ocean conditions before heading out. He'd spent weeks planning this solo dawn patrol session, hoping to unite his love for surfing and marine biology. He arrived at Surf Beach as the sun rose, spending the first hour checking the conditions and waxing his board. But Anthony was restless. He told other early morning surfers that the best waves were beyond the crowded areas, even though it was right next to a massive seal rookery at Point Conception. That morning, Anthony set out early, carrying his 6'2" shortboard and minimal safety gear. He signed the beach access log, indicating he'd be surfing the main break. But somewhere along the way, he spotted what looked like perfect waves breaking further offshore. Despite the prominent warning signs about marine life, he paddled out about 150 yards from shore to position himself. The area was beautiful, almost too beautiful. Seals barked in the distance, and the water was crystal clear, revealing the sandy bottom. As he set up for the perfect wave, Anthony noticed something unsettling. The water was strangely quiet. No other surfers were in sight, and the seals had stopped chattering. But he was so focused on catching that wave that he ignored these warnings. Finally, he was perfectly positioned, sitting on his board with his legs dangling in the water. Then an eerie silence fell over the ocean. Out of nowhere, it appeared, a massive great white shark emerging from the depths, a mere 20 feet below him. What Anthony didn't realize was that he had entered the territory of one of nature's most efficient predators. Great whites are living fossils, virtually unchanged for millions of years. Their torpedo-shaped bodies are perfectly designed for explosive attacks. These apex predators can detect blood from up to 500 yards away and sense the electrical impulses of a beating heart from several meters. When hunting, they approach from the depths with incredible speed, exceeding 35 miles per hour, using surprise to deliver devastating attacks with bite forces reaching up to 4,000 pounds per square inch. Anthony reacted instantly, but there was nowhere to go. The massive predator struck from directly below, closing the distance in a split second. He managed to see the shark's massive form just before impact. The attack was so forceful that both he and his surfboard were launched into the air. His screams pierced the morning silence as the shark's jaws clamped down on his torso, the massive head shaking violently, razor-sharp teeth slicing through flesh and bone. The great white released Anthony after several seconds, typical behavior when encountering unfamiliar prey, but the damage was already catastrophic. Blood immediately clouded the pristine water as Anthony, despite his severe injuries, began paddling frantically toward shore on his damaged board. The shark circled below, following the blood trail but keeping its distance, waiting to see if this strange prey would weaken enough to approach safely. He managed to cover nearly half the distance to shore, his movements growing weaker as blood loss and shock overwhelmed him. A jogger on the beach heard Anthony's desperate screams and immediately called for help. But the remote location meant rescue was still minutes away. By the time lifeguards arrived, Anthony had disappeared beneath the surface, the ocean swallowing him whole. 2 hours later, Anthony's mangled surfboard washed ashore, bearing the unmistakable crescent-shaped bite marks of a great white shark. The massive gouges told the story of an encounter with one of nature's most efficient predators. His body was never recovered, despite extensive search efforts. The university established a memorial scholarship in his name, and Surf Beach was temporarily closed while marine biologists studied great white activity in the area. The attack led to enhanced warning systems and additional safety briefings for surfers. As the sun set over the California coastline, the memory of Anthony White served as a stark reminder. I've spent years studying the ocean's most formidable predators, but few stories have haunted me like the one from Galveston Bay. It serves as a chilling reminder of the ocean's unforgiving power. On the morning of September 3, 2015, what began as a perfect day for fishing would soon turn into a nightmare. The sky was a brilliant blue over the Gulf Coast that day, with just enough offshore breeze to create ideal fishing conditions. David Walter, a 26-year-old first-generation immigrant, had built his charter fishing business from the ground up. He was exactly the kind of entrepreneur who embodied the American dream. His clients loved his infectious enthusiasm and his uncanny ability to find fish no matter the conditions. Friends described him as methodical and safety-conscious, always double-checking his equipment. He was driven by an almost obsessive desire to give his customers the perfect fishing experience. On this particular day, David was taking 4 tourists from Dallas out to celebrate a bachelor party. He had promised them action in the productive waters near the Galveston jetties. The first few hours were a success. They pulled in red snapper and speckled trout, filling the cooler with their catch as David expertly managed the boat. He navigated to his favorite spot, just a mile offshore, where the depth dropped to 25 feet, attracting schools of bait fish and the predators that hunted them. The tourists were having the time of their lives, already talking about booking another trip. But as they prepared to move to a new location, disaster struck. The boat's engine coughed, sputtered, and died completely, leaving them drifting in the strong Gulf current toward the busy shipping channel. David quickly diagnosed the problem: a clogged fuel filter, which should have been a simple fix. But as he worked on the engine, the boat's anchor began dragging in the powerful current. The situation was becoming dangerous, and David knew he had to act fast. Local charter captains had warned about recent unusual activity in the area, but such warnings were common in Texas waters. The water had been murky since recent storms, making it harder to see what might be lurking beneath the surface. David had fished these waters for years without incident, and he reasoned that the popular fishing spot would be safe with other boats nearby. With his clients growing nervous about their drifting boat, David made a fateful decision. He stripped down and dove overboard to manually reset the anchor, hoping to stabilize their position while he fixed the engine. What David didn't know was that he had entered the hunting grounds of one of the Gulf's most dangerous predators, the bull shark. These sharks are among the most adaptable killers in the ocean. Equally at home in saltwater and freshwater environments, these stocky, powerful hunters possess specialized kidneys that allow them to regulate salt levels in their blood, enabling them to swim far up rivers and into freshwater lakes where other sharks cannot survive. This unique adaptation means bull sharks can appear virtually anywhere there's water, from the open ocean to golf course ponds miles inland. Their aggressive temperament and willingness to investigate anything in their territory makes them responsible for more unprovoked attacks on humans than any other species except great whites. With a bite force of 1,350 lbs per square inch and electroreceptors that can detect electrical fields from several meters away, bull sharks employ a relentless bite-and-release pattern, striking multiple times with the tenacity of a pit bull until their prey stops moving. David worked underwater to free the stuck anchor, but the current was stronger than expected, and the anchor had become wedged in debris. The 7-foot bull shark had been patrolling the fishing grounds for hours, drawn by the chum slick created by David's successful charter. The predator's incredibly acute senses detected the electrical fields generated by David's rapidly beating heart and the scent of blood from hundreds of yards away. What happened next occurred with shocking speed. David never saw the shark coming through the murky water. The bull shark struck from behind, its massive jaws clamping down on his leg with crushing force, before immediately releasing and circling for another attack. The impact was so violent that David's clients heard his muffled scream through the water. David fought desperately to reach the surface, but the bull shark continued its relentless assault. True to their species' aggressive nature, the predator struck again and again, each bite tearing away more flesh. The shark's persistence was terrifying. Once committed to an attack, bull sharks rarely give up, continuing until their prey stops moving. The multiple attacks created a feeding frenzy mentality, and the murky water became a churning mass of blood and violence. David's clients watched in horror as the water around their boat turned red. They screamed for help and radioed the Coast Guard, but David had already disappeared beneath the surface, overwhelmed by the bull shark's relentless assault. The Coast Guard arrived nearly an hour later, finding only David's torn shorts floating in blood-stained water. The bull shark had vanished into the murky depths, leaving behind only traumatic memories for 4 witnesses. There's a story they tell in boating safety courses along the Texas coast, a cautionary tale about the Gulf's bull sharks, how they hunt in murky shallows where death can strike without warning. David, they called him. His body was never recovered, and his charter business died with him. That incident, as tragic as it was, prompted new safety protocols, emergency beacons and backup communication systems. But thousands of miles away, in the crystal-clear waters of Hawaii, another predator was about to demonstrate why it's earned the most terrifying nickname in the ocean. This time, the attack would happen under cover of darkness, where even paradise becomes a hunting ground for nature's most indiscriminate killer. The evening of April 22, 2016, brought perfect conditions to the remote coastline near Hana, Maui. A gentle trade wind rustled through the palm trees as the sun painted the sky in brilliant tropical colors. 24-year-old Christian Smith couldn't have asked for better conditions for his solo fishing adventure at one of his secret spots along Maui's untouched coastline. Christian embodied the laid-back Hawaiian lifestyle that drew so many to the islands. With his easy smile and encyclopedic knowledge of hidden fishing spots, he had become a local favorite at the surf shop where he worked. Friends described him as fearless and independent, always venturing to remote locations that other anglers avoided, constantly searching for the perfect fishing experience that only the islands could provide. That evening, Christian loaded his truck with heavy tackle designed for the large predatory fish that hunted Hawaiian waters after dark. The location he'd chosen was breathtakingly beautiful, but completely isolated. A secluded beach accessible only by a rough dirt road winding through dense tropical vegetation. Christian arrived just as darkness was settling over the ocean. The spot was perfect. A protected cove with deep water close to shore and a coral reef that attracted schools of bait fish during night hours. He set up his gear methodically, rigging the heavy equipment he'd need for the monsters that prowled these waters after sunset. As Christian waded into about 6 feet of crystal clear water to cast beyond the reef break, everything seemed perfect. The water was so clear he could see the white sand bottom, even in starlight. He'd already landed 2 nice fish when disaster struck. Moving through the water to reposition for a better cast, Christian's foot slipped on wet volcanic rock. He fell hard against sharp coral formations, opening a deep gash on his leg. Blood immediately began streaming into the pristine water around him. Local Hawaiian fishermen had warned about increased predator activity during night hours, but Christian had fished these waters countless times. What he didn't know was that the remote location had become a hunting ground for one of the ocean's most dangerous predators. As Christian tried to assess his injury in the dim light, he realized the cut was deeper than expected. His splashing and the metallic scent of blood created the perfect storm of stimuli that trigger a predator's hunting instincts. Unknown to Christian, he had attracted the attention of Hawaii's apex predator. Tiger sharks are perfectly adapted for nighttime hunting in both shallow and deep waters, earning the nickname wastebasket of the sea because they'll eat virtually anything. Their stomachs have contained license plates, tires, and even other sharks. These massive sharks can grow up to 18 feet long and possess an indiscriminate appetite that makes them particularly deadly during nighttime hours when they move into shallow water to hunt. Tiger sharks can detect blood from several hundred yards away, and their lateral line system senses the slightest vibrations in the water, making escape nearly impossible once they lock onto a target. Christian began wading toward shore, but his movements became increasingly erratic as blood loss affected his coordination. The coral cut was more serious than he'd thought, and the metallic scent drifting through the water was like ringing a dinner bell for every predator in the area. The 10-foot tiger shark had been patrolling the reef edge when Christian's blood trail reached its sensitive nostrils. Unlike more cautious reef sharks, tiger sharks are known for their bold, reckless approach to anything in their territory, especially during nighttime hunting hours when they become most active. Christian never saw death coming through the dark water. The attack was sudden and devastating. The tiger shark struck from the side, its massive jaws clamping down on his injured leg with crushing force. The impact knocked Christian off his feet, sending him tumbling in the deeper water. The predator's attack was relentless and indiscriminate. Tiger sharks are known for their tenacious grip, often holding prey while using their muscular bodies to roll and tear. The shark maintained its grip while striking with its powerful tail, creating a whirlpool of violence. What makes tiger shark attacks particularly horrific is their feeding behavior. Once they taste blood, they enter a feeding frenzy, biting repeatedly until prey stops moving. Christian fought desperately, but the predator's grip was unbreakable, and each movement only intensified the attack. In the darkness, I've always been drawn to the stories where the ocean, so often a source of joy and sustenance, turns unforgiving. Consider Christian, for instance. On a remote Hawaiian beach, his screams faded unheard across the empty coastline. A tiger shark, driven by its indiscriminate hunger, and there was no escape. When morning broke, his truck stood alone at the end of a dirt road, fishing gear untouched on the sand. Christian had simply vanished, claimed by the very waters that had once given him so much. They found his body 4 days later, 8 miles away. The Hawaiian community honored him with a traditional blessing, and his surf shop colleagues established a memorial fund dedicated to ocean safety education. But even as Hawaii's tiger sharks hunt under the cover of darkness, a different kind of predator was about to demonstrate off the rugged Northern California coast that even the most seasoned watermen are never truly safe. November 8, 2017, dawned crisp and clear at Fort Ross, Northern California. The morning fog lifted, revealing a dramatic rocky coastline where Pacific swells crashed against ancient sea stacks. Ryan Walsh, a 29-year-old commercial abalone diver, couldn't have asked for better conditions. Calm seas and good visibility promised a profitable day, harvesting those prized mollusks that fetch premium prices in the finest restaurants. Ryan was the embodiment of this dangerous profession. His weathered hands and sun-damaged face spoke of 6 years spent in the frigid Pacific, free diving to depths that would terrify recreational divers. Friends described him as methodical and safety-conscious, yet driven by an obsessive pursuit of the perfect abalone beds hidden in the rocky depths. That morning, Ryan launched his small boat with his dive partner, Marcus, a younger diver who looked up to Ryan as a mentor. They'd worked together for 3 seasons, developing that wordless communication that comes from facing shared danger in one of California's most hazardous occupations. Ryan chose a productive rocky reef in about 25 feet of water. The location was challenging, with strong currents, kelp forests, and the ever-present danger of entanglement in abandoned fishing nets littering the bottom. As Ryan suited up in his thick wetsuit, he felt that familiar mix of excitement and apprehension. The water temperature was a bone-chilling 55 degrees, but Ryan had built up a tolerance over years of expo. His dive bag contained an abalone iron, measuring gauge, and collection bag, the tools of his dangerous trade. The first few dives went perfectly. Ryan descended through the kelp canopy to the rocky bottom, where clusters of red abalone clung like living jewels. His experienced eye identified legal specimens, and his practiced hands pried them loose with surgical precision. But on his seventh dive, disaster struck. Working to free a particularly large abalone, Ryan's fin became entangled in abandoned fishing nets. The nearly invisible monofilament wrapped around his leg like a spider's web, holding him against the rocky bottom as his air supply ran dangerously low. After a desperate struggle, Ryan managed to cut through enough netting to break free. He made an emergency ascent, lungs burning as he fought through the kelp toward the sunlight. When he finally surfaced, he was exhausted, disoriented, and dangerously far from his boat. What Ryan didn't realize was that his distressed movements had attracted the attention of California's apex predator. Great white sharks, living fossils that have patrolled these waters for millions of years, perfectly adapted to hunt in the kelp forests where seals and sea lions congregate. These massive sharks typically reach 12 to 16 feet and can weigh over 3,000 pounds. Their torpedo-shaped bodies are capable of explosive bursts exceeding 35 miles per hour, sometimes launching them completely out of the water. Their incredible sensory systems allow them to detect electrical fields from several meters away and track blood trails from 500 yards away. During autumn, mature great whites patrol northern California in greater numbers, following the migration patterns of their preferred prey. These sharks are incredibly intelligent, capable of learning and adapting hunting strategies, making them unpredictable and extremely dangerous to humans who venture into their territory. Marcus, watching from 300 yards away, immediately recognized that something was wrong. Ryan floated motionless at the surface, clearly in distress. Marcus started the engine and raced toward his partner, but the distance seemed impossibly far. A 13-foot great white had been patrolling the kelp beds when it detected Ryan's emergency ascent. The shark's acute senses picked up the electrical impulses from his rapidly beating heart, the scent of abalone in his collection bag, and the erratic movements of a creature in distress, all triggers activating its predatory instincts. Ryan never saw the attack coming. The great white struck from below with devastating force, its massive jaws clamping down on his torso with a bite force reaching 4,000 pounds per square inch, slicing through his wetsuit and into vital organs. The shark's initial bite was exploratory, typical great white behavior with unfamiliar prey, but the damage was already catastrophic. The predator released Ryan and circled back, following the blood. I'll never forget reading about Ryan's death. Just 20 minutes after the attack, gone. A shock wave, they said, rippled through the abalone diving community. New regulations came, studies were launched. But even as that tragedy unfolded in California, Another was brewing hundreds of miles south, in the warm waters off Florida. This time, the crystal-clear water would offer a terrifying clarity, revealing nature's brutal efficiency. August 14th, 2013. The sun sparkled on the Atlantic near Jupiter Inlet. It was perfect weather for the annual South Florida spearfishing tournament. Alex Paul, a 33-year-old construction foreman from Miami, was in his element. He lived for those weekends, free diving in the clear waters, perfecting his aim. He wasn't a professional, but his skill earned him respect. That morning, he joined 40 other competitors for the briefing. Cobia, kingfish, grouper, prized game fish, high points. Alex had scouted promising spots, and with sunrise, the boat scattered. Alex and his buddy Carlos headed to a reef 30 feet down, where baitfish attracted bigger predators. The water was crystal clear, 80-foot visibility. For 2 hours, Alex had moderate success, landing smaller fish. But as the morning wore on, he craved a trophy. Then he saw it. A massive cobia cruising the reef, easily 50 pounds, worth maximum points. He hyperventilated, dove, and struck perfectly behind the gills. The fish bolted for deeper water. Lost in the thrill, Alex separated from Carlos, finding himself alone on an isolated part of the reef. The wounded cobia's struggle left a significant blood trail as Alex fought to control it. Finally, he surfaced, exhausted and bleeding from cuts caused by the fish. The combination of fish blood and his own, along with the dying cobia's struggles, created a perfect storm, triggering the predatory instincts of every shark nearby. What Alex didn't realize was that he'd attracted one of Florida's most dangerous predators, the bull shark. Perfectly adapted to those warm coastal waters, bull sharks can even survive in fresh water. These powerful hunters, typically 6 to 8 feet long, can detect vibrations from struggling fish hundreds of yards away and sense electrical fields from meters away. Unlike some sharks, they're known for their bold approach to potential food, often competing with spear fishermen. Their aggressive nature and opportunistic feeding make them one of the most feared predators in American waters. This 7-foot bull shark had been patrolling the reef. The scent of blood reached its nostrils from hundreds of yards away. Its acute senses detected the electrical fields of both the struggling fish and Alex's rapidly beating heart. Alex saw the shark approaching. He released the cobia, hoping to distract it. But bull sharks are opportunistic, and the presence of multiple potential prey only intensified its aggression. Instead of taking the offered fish, the water turned crimson so quickly. A moment ago, it was just another dive, another competition. Then, a bull shark struck, and everything changed in an instant. The attack on Alex was as brutal as it was swift. Massive jaws clamped down on his leg, severing major blood vessels. The shark's multiple strikes caused devastating tissue damage. I can only imagine the desperate fight, Alex punching at the shark's snout, trying to reach his dive knife. But the bull shark's aggression was relentless. Other divers, alerted by the commotion and the spreading slick of blood, raced to help. They found him floating unconscious, his spear gun and the wounded cobia drifting nearby. The bull shark was gone, leaving behind only the terrible evidence of its attack. Despite immediate first aid and a Coast Guard helicopter evacuation, Alex died from massive blood loss during the 40-minute flight to the trauma center. The tournament was canceled, and the spearfishing community mourned the loss of one of their most respected members. His death, though tragic, wasn't in vain. It led to enhanced safety protocols at tournaments. Now, divers are required to stay in closer proximity to their buddies. Organizers provide emergency response training. A memorial fund was even established to promote safer diving practices. It's a small comfort, perhaps, but it means that Alex's legacy lives on in the effort to protect others.